We are good. What's
Hey
up,
guys, how you
everyone?
doing?
How you guys doing?
Good, good.
Grand.
Good. Good. So we're here for our Mastermind Meetup. My name is Neil Henning of Highview Homes. I'm a real estate investor, and I have a couple properties. Really, a rental unit investor. I have 3 properties with 5 rental units, and just finished my first flip. And you'll get to hear about it in just a little bit.
Hey, I'm Will Holder with William Holder Realty, real estate agent, investor. Have a couple of investment properties, done a couple of flips, and full-time job as a real estate agent, and do investing on the side.
And I'm Matt Porter. I work with Will. I'm sure if I saw some of you guys that are going to see this, I was the guy in the corner with the long hair, making sure everything goes smoothly. I do operations management for Will and a lot of his marketing and design work as well. On the side, though, we've been trying to get into more real estate investment as we see these juicy deals coming across our desks every day. So I'm here to talk about one of those deals, my first deal with a team of people. So
Awesome.
Yep.
Awesome. So, normally we do this meeting in person. We did one earlier this year. We would have loved to do a second this quarter. Unfortunately, due to COVID and social distancing, we are finding creative ways to get this content out to all of our investors and all of our clients, and happy to put this out for you. If you have any questions about anything, always feel free to reach out to myself or Neil, and we'll still try to help you in any way we can while it's practicing social distancing. But as an investor in the current climate, it's obviously tricky. It's hard to get work done, and we want to keep sharing and motivating our clients and our investor clients whilst we're all trying to live through what is now this global pandemic. So without delaying too much further, I'm going to let Matt jump into a recent deal we partnered on, 4 of us. So it was Matt, his father and uncle, and myself. And it was a pretty good bird. You'll see from Matt's slides and his explanation. Let Matt jump into that now.
Sweet. All right. So as we started doing all of the investment stuff, I saw a ton of properties prior to this one. I think that's really important to start things off with. So we have one good deal today for now, and it was a good one, thank God. My first one ended out being pretty close to perfect. So we used the BRRRR strategy. So if you don't know that, it's the buy, rehab, refinance, repeat strategy. As Will was saying, we were talking a little bit before we went live here. That's becoming a lot harder to do now, but I'll let Will get into that. But luckily for us, maybe the last BRRRR for a little bit around here, but we actually ended up making it pretty perfect, pretty as close to perfect as we could. It was our first project, and it was a screaming success, I would say. We had no major hiccups. We had no real huge bumps in the road, no like, oh crap moments where we needed this and that, and we didn't first see it. A lot of that was because of our research and homework and preparation, I think. So before jumping on this opportunity, we had seen a lot go by the office desk. So we'd said no to a lot of projects to make sure that our numbers worked first and foremost before we got too excited or fell in love with any of these homes. And it's hard not to do that. You see this perfect opportunity and you're like, oh, I want that. And then you do the numbers and it's like 20 grand out of what a perfect BRRRR would be. And you're like, oh, we could do it. We could make it happen. And that's just not a good idea. So we stayed pretty disciplined. And finally, this one came up, and it had a lot of great advantages. One of those being the zone of appreciation. We looked at the last 2 to 3 years of homes in that area of where this house was located, and we noticed like a close to 20% appreciation value in the homes over the last 2 to 3 years. So if you project that forward, that's just really great appreciation. So that was a really good positive. We came at it with a really aggressive bid. You'll see those numbers later, but we purchased it under value. And another thing that we didn't really think about before the project, but while the project was going on, we noticed the really big benefit to having a larger team. And that was a large reason because a lot of us brought different things to the team. I know, Will, you wanted to talk a little bit about that as well, with different team members bringing different things and stuff.
Yeah, so I wanted to chime in on that. In the past, I've made the mistake, and a lot of you already know some of my previous real estate hiccups.
Yeah.
In the past, I've made the mistake of trying to go a lot of things in my own because I sell a lot of homes and I see a lot of investors doing it, and I think, well, I can do that. That's it's not that hard. But the reality is, when you're busy and when you're spending a lot of time doing your primary job and your focus is supplying income for your family, you tend to view this as a secondary project. You tend to view it as kind of a pest in your life a lot of the times. And when you have help, when you can spread the work out, it really makes the project easier. Also, you bring more skill sets to the table, like Matt said. A lot of these things that are going to come up, we ended up having to do ourselves. And when you have skilled people in there to do the work and help you with it, you can kind of save yourself on the budget. So that's one big plus. I think the other thing is you have more people making decisions. If you're the only one making a decision, you can make a mistake versus 4 informed people involved in the transaction. It doesn't have to be 4. It could be 2, 3, 5, 20, however you want to structure your deal. But I think when you weigh the options and you get more opinions, you tend to come to a more valid, conclusion versus just making the choice yourself and living with the results. You tend to make more mistakes. So I think partnering is a great idea. Pretty much everyone I've talked to about real estate, and Neil knows, Matt, no, I'm a huge proponent of partnering after what I've been through doing deals myself.
Yeah, no, we're only limited to what we know and our experiences, right? So the more people you have on your team, the less gaps in knowledge and lack of experience that kind of come up. So yeah, that was really helpful. A lot of us are really handy, so that came in handy. Really, really beneficial later on. But we'll get to that later.
And Neil, you're partnered on Highview Homes. You're not doing it by yourself.
Nope. I definitely have a partner, and I'll speak to that in a little bit. Some best practices and such. I want you guys to go on a little bit more, but I do have a question, maybe
Sure.
answer after you're done, around like how'd you divvy up the work? Because 4 people, that's a lot. I'm curious to see like who had what role.
So I think something we discussed at the end of this transaction after we looked back and took role on what we did right and what we did wrong. Partnering is great, but if you don't specify each person's responsibilities, it can become tricky, right?
Yeah.
And I think a lot of it is just like doing a scope of work is super important for doing a renovation project. Doing a scope of partner responsibilities and expectations from each other, I think, is equally as important, because we had issues with that too. There are things that came up that maybe not maybe 3 of us discussed and 1 didn't, and when the issue came up, it led to some confusion. Never any bickering or anything. It was more, if we had dealt with these problems up front, like we've learned as investors, putting a scope of work together, being running your numbers. It's the same as divvying up what responsibilities each partner has.
Sure.
And I think that's super important, and we learned that as well.
I have
there were
a common theme.
Yeah.
There were a ton of times where we were like going back and forth between things that if we had just all said, okay, this is how this is going to work, we wouldn't have been confused and like texting back and forth and then calling each other, because texting is just difficult sometimes with this stuff. So you have those moments that are, you know, inhibitors to progress. And if you have those scope of works laid out beforehand, it makes progress go faster. And that's, you know, one of the biggest things I learned along the way here, this being my first one, was you're always against the clock with these. And anything you can do to shave time off that clock is beneficial. So kind of sucks because you know, you want to enjoy it too. I know I did. I wanted this to be fun and exciting, but it is also, you know, a career path if you can make it that way. So you have to be smart about it, and you have to be disciplined. And a lot of these like preparatory things that you can do, like setting expectations with your team members, will go a long way to shaving off time and money. And you know, because the longer you go, the more holding costs rise. So anyway, yeah, next thing that was a major thing that helped us was our um, estimations with our profits. We greatly underestimated our profits. We were conservative, I guess is a better way to put it, with our ARV, our after repair value, and our rental income. And we'll get into the numbers of these later, but we basically undershot our ARV so that if we got a bad appraisal, or if it came back that, you know, it just wasn't worth as much as we thought it was, which, you know, is probably going to happen with your first property. We wanted a little bit of cushion there, so we kind of built that in. So that helped us out. And also our rental income being in Swarthmore, we knew we could get good rental income because of the zip code in the area, but we just weren't sure that the comps that we saw were going to play out. So we kind of made our cash flow model around some of the lower end rental income comps that we saw. Same thing with the ARVs that we saw. So those all ended up turning out to be actually conservative and lower. So they ended up going much higher than that, which was really great. A nice little cap to the end of the project. Doing
And a lot of my investor clients, you know, have asked me this, especially when they first start working with me. You know, Neil and Dan at Highview Homes, they understand when I send them numbers, I'm sending them conservative numbers.
Yeah.
And I'm always going to give you what's the safest possible ARV, what's the safest number I feel confident that you will get in rent. You know, I've had new investor clients that come back to me and they really want to make a deal work. So they're saying, well, hey, there's this other property across the street that is selling for $250 and you're telling me $220. What's the issue here? And I'm like, well, you have to remember that property's 300 square feet less. You know, there's not a walkout basement. It's not as wide of a property. There are these things that people don't take into account, and they want to, especially when you're new, you're always assuming I can get this versus, you know, someone that has been through 250 appraisals. Like, I know what appraisers are looking for, and I know how much they can kill a deal. And I want to be as certain as possible that the numbers we're working are the worst case scenario. Now, if you can work it on the worst case scenario and the deal comes through and you're appraised for significantly more, then everybody's going to be happy. You know, does it make the deal harder to get done? Yes. Will it make, you know, you purchasing that property a little bit more difficult because you have to be tighter with your numbers and your offer will be lower? Sure. But that's all protecting you as the investor. And
yeah, better to be that way than the other. You know, better to be on that end of the spectrum than to be way over. Yeah. Okay, so let's look at some more details on this. So those are the good things. That's all the good. And now the things we learned, our lessons learned, and the bad. By far our biggest hit to our budget was our hard money costs at 14% for our renovation loan. That killed us. It killed us because we held the project for double the amount of time we thought we were going to. So we went in thinking it was going to be about a 3-month timeline, and it ended up being about a 5.5, 6 month timeline. Now that was because of a lot of reasons. We underestimated the amount of work needed, and we also increased the amount of work for ourselves to get a better end product, because we kind of just weren't okay with doing a like rental flip, because we've never done that before. So a lot of the times we were trying to push our craftsmanship up as high as possible as like almost like a pride thing, because we were doing a lot of the work ourselves. And I think that ended up making more work and more renovation budget in a lot of areas for us. So our costs went up because we wanted to do a nicer job. And without the experience of knowing, okay, yes, this is a rental cabinet, or this is a rental kitchen, or this is what's needed in a bathroom for a rental. We got smart in a lot of areas, but we also pushed our fixtures into more of a like flip renovation than a rental renovation. And so that increased our projected budget for a renovation. So we had this kind of compounding bad interest loan plus a projected renovation budget that was actually too low, and our pride getting in the way of wanting to do a really, really nice renovation because we were doing a lot of it ourselves. So those three things added our costs like way up. We ended up paying, double the holding costs of everything, and ended up making a lot of more work for ourselves. In the end, it worked out, but we got lucky with a lot of the things that happened here. And I think that if we continue with this sort of process of doing flip style fixtures for every rental that we do, we're not going to hit a home run every time. So I think that that's something that's pretty, good to think about as we move forward. So,
couple quick
yeah.
questions there. So 14%. Why was it 14%?
Well, yeah, go ahead, Will.
Why not the usual like 12% right now?
Right. So we have a lender, the hard money lender I'm talking about. You've used them as well, Neil, that we were going to work with. That Matt and I are familiar with. Unfortunately, Matt's dad and uncle are very old school, and they wanted to go the route of doing this cash, which we knew wasn't really an option. It wasn't, it was a slim chance we could pull off this whole deal of cash.
Sure.
Unless, everybody's dipping into their 401k. It just didn't make sense.
Yeah.
So if they were going to go the route of hard money, they wanted as least exposure as possible. They didn't want to go with a hard money lender that was asking for financials, things like that. These guys are, they protect their, generationally, people are a little bit different. They protect their social security numbers and their financial statements. So we had to get creative and find a lender that would do this deal basically by the numbers. And as
no doc lender.
Right. No doc lender. No, they don't do credit. They basically just said, what's the deal? What are the numbers? They look good. Sign here. Great. It's easy. However, it comes with more risk to the lender, higher rate. And it going forward, now that these guys understand the process and we've gained their trust using this first lender and done a deal, and they understand how great this can be, we're going to we've since found a great lender that's lending closer to prime rate actually for renovation projects. So our hard money costs are going to be a third of what they are. If not,
that's like a 9% savings or something.
Yeah. Which was another plus to this whole deal. We found a great lender to refi us out on the back end, but they're also going to fund some of our renovations going forward. So
sure,
it worked out. The other thing I wanted to mention about the bads, just based on this picture alone that you're seeing on the slide, is we didn't do a very detailed scope of work. So when we initially talked about doing this project, we didn't talk about opening up walls and ceilings. This was going to be more of a cosmetic renovation. Luckily, these guys have the expertise and have the contacts to make a cosmetic renovation go into a full-blown reno and not cost us a ton of money. But most people, if you make that change, it's going to kill your budget.
Yep.
And that's something that if you're an investor and you're not planning on doing any of the work, count for the worst. Because also, if you can squeeze an inspection into your contingency, for instance, we opened up these ceilings, we found knob and tube wiring, the house had to be rewired. So that alone right there would kill most people's budget. If we did an inspection, we might have been able to shave that money off of the actual purchase price. So if you can squeeze an inspection into your offers and still get them accepted, it's definitely worth it, as you know, Neil.
Yeah, definitely agree with that. Just on that note, like the last property that you helped us get, we did an inspection on that, and look, it wasn't a cheap inspection either, but it saved $10,000. So $10,000 to pay for a $600 inspection, which is a ridiculous price, but still.
Yeah, agreed.
Yeah, saves you that money. It was our first deal, so we were trying to, make sure we got it. We fell in love with this, and so we came in aggressively with the as is, which ended up, costing us a little bit as well, on the back end. So, going along with what Will was saying about the scope of work needed, we definitely should have done that, and that was a thing that we actually started to do towards the end, where we were about halfway through the renovation. We stopped everything, and we were like, all right, we need to write down a full scope of everything that's needed to be done by the end of this project. And so we went out and went around the whole place and wrote a scope of work, listed out every single thing that needed to be done, put it on a piece of paper, and tacked it inside the property. And whenever anyone came over at night or on the weekend, you look at the list, circle something with your color or whatever, and that's what you're working on that time. And so you have a really clear goal set now and a really clear direction when you have limited time, which the majority of us did. Thank God my father was retired, because he was over there pretty much full time every day, making sure everything was progressing and talking to all the contacts. If this were us just trying to do it with full-time jobs, like, I don't know how this would have worked out. It would have been pretty difficult. But thank goodness we had a wide team member base so we had someone running point on it all day, keeping the daily updates. Like, that was just another benefit of just having this good team. So that was part of the bad, that we didn't really know what we were getting into reno wise, and so we basically for 6 months had to forfeit our nights and weekends every weekend for 6 months to work on the house to make sure that it got done and stayed relatively in budget. So the sweat equity we put into this was pretty significant, and taxing on our personal lives. So it was it would be great if that didn't happen again. It basically can't happen again, or else we'd all be single, living in like a two-bedroom house together somewhere else, because we'd all be in trouble. So it was a lot of learning in that area of knowing how to produce the scope of work that actually works, and getting ourselves into a better position with a lender, which we got to finally by the end of the refinance. So quickly going over the advantages of the property, it was a Swarthmore zip code, which means that it gave us a higher quality of potential tenant. Swarthmore is a really desirable place to live in our area. It's a great location. It's got great schools. It's close to college with a beautiful campus. It's like right on the 95. You're like walking distance from 95. It's got like breakfast places, all the local amenities right nearby. So it was a great area. Reasonably priced neighborhood. It was the Swarthmore zip code, but it was in Swarthmore Wood. So Swarthmore Wood is actually a Ridley township, and that gave us the ability to really get that that home for the price that we wanted it for. If it were in Swarthmore proper, we never would have gotten the price that we got. So we ended up getting a really good angle on this purchase.
As an investor, if you're looking to be smart, about purchases, it's similar to what people do in cities. If you want to invest in a city, you find a hot neighborhood and you plant a pin one block outside of it. You find a property right on the outskirts of that neighborhood, because eventually that's going to trickle over, right? It's similar to, you can find that same structure of a deal in the suburbs. You might not get the same school district, but if you inherit the zip code and the name, it's pretty common that a school district can be different for the same zip code and or name of the town. And you get some of that residual effect of the higher end name and zip code versus the school district. So that's kind of what we employed here. We found a neighborhood that bordered a really, really, really desirable area in a pretty, it wouldn't make sense to purchase rentals in Swarthmore proper. The taxes are too high, the property values are too high. You wouldn't make a profit. But if you target some of the neighborhoods directly around it, you can get a deal like this.
Yeah.
Great call.
So the next thing that was a great advantage was the future growth potential, which Will just talked about. We knew that the home was going to appreciate, so we knew that we, again, could have our numbers grow over time with our rental instead of, just staying stagnant, which will make everything more profitable. Swarthmore tenant meant we could shoot for a higher rental income. So we knew that our rental income was conservative, but we positioned ourselves with the purchase of this property to be able to get like B or A class tenant. So the next was some quality of life things that were advantages of this property, and that was it was right down the street from most of us, so that was easy. 10-minute drive to your nights and weekends project is pretty doable. If it were an hour or more, that would not have been possible. And since it's 10 minutes away from all of us, we knew the area really well, so we kind of had some subtleties and nuances about the property that kind of gave us an advantage. So let's do the numbers real quick. Asking price was $125. We ended up getting it for $110 and as is. Now, if we had done $110 with a inspection contingency, we might have saved a bunch of money there. But lessons learned. Our estimated rental budget was $40,000 from our just quick kind of look through. Okay, this only needs cosmetic upgrades here and there. Our actual rental budget came in at about $50,000, a little over $50,000. This probably would have been much worse, but we got lucky with a bunch of things, like we didn't need a roof. And we kind of thought we might have needed a roof. So that was part of our estimated budget. If that was in our estimated budget, we also greatly underestimated that budget. So, it's just the inexperience of us and kind of the stubbornness of what we wanted to do for our first one, our baby, to make a really, really nice looking property. So
it goes to show what having team members helps. I'm an experienced real estate agent. I've shown thousands of houses. I've sold hundreds. Like, I saw that roof and I thought that roof's going to go in the next 3 to 5 years. As a BRRRR, you want a new roof, you want a new heater. You don't want to have to replace any of the major systems of the property in the first 10 years of owning the property. Because that's usually when your reserves will catch up to that. And I factored for a roof, but once we were settled, we had a roofer come out and he said, no, the roof has at least 10 years left on it. Now,
that's surprising. A roofer came out,
right?
I didn't sell your roof.
I was ecstatic.
Good guy.
Great mistake. However, and good roofer. And again, the only reason we got that roofer is because one of the teammates the team members was friends with him. So, we found someone honest and willing to give us an honest opinion because they have a relationship that we're tapping into for this transaction. But a few things to think back on that. One, if I had a home inspection, I wouldn't have factored for a roof in the budget. So again, get a home inspection. Two, if I had a home inspection, I would have found the knob and tube wiring and gotten more off the price of the property. So inspections are key. Team members that know people and have contacts they trust are key. and a scope of work. If we'd done a scope of work based on the home inspection, wouldn't have been surprised by these things throughout the project, which this was a pleasant surprise, but the knob and tube, not so much. So
which part of this house did Will help build?
Oh, zero.
Was it
the problem
did
with
Will do the exposed brick there? Because that looks good.
the problem with nights and weekends is that's when most of my clients want to see houses.
That's what I'm calling you.
yeah. So it was pretty specific, and this I was pretty specific in the beginning. I'll find and vet the deal, and I'll find the financing. But swinging hammers isn't something I have time for, or to be honest, I'm not very good at.
Yeah. Those expectations were set.
I got a few calls like, "Hey, Will, you want to come out and help?" And immediately the answer was no. Got shows.
You don't want me to, nor do I want to.
Yeah. Have you seen this work at my house?
This won't be good for you, right? If you can see, I don't know if you guys can see, but the picture down below here is actually this room. So this was the kind of level of work we pushed for. It's a little tiny, but we really tried to do more of a flip than we should have, but it actually ended up working out. So we estimated at 40. Our actual reno was closer to 50. We projected a 3-month. We actually did a 5.5 month. We ended up paying that 6th payment, unfortunately, because our refinance process took a while, and that was something that we didn't really plan well with. We ended up eating another hard money payment on our construction loan because we didn't factor enough time in before our refinance. So that was a bummer. But again, things that we learned on our first project, we needed to budget at least 30 days for that refinance, and we came in at like, I don't know, 15 or 16 days, and we were like, "Yeah, do you think you can get it done?" And they were like, "Oh, I don't know, I don't think so." So
especially during the beginning of a pandemic. So.
Right, yeah. All of this is a lot of things happened with this property that were just like, wow, if this had been a month later or 2 months later, we would have been totally screwed. So for some reason we got it done when we did, and thank goodness, because we probably would not have been able to find a tenant right now especially at the price point for what we did. So thank goodness we got in a good tenant in there. But our holding costs were definitely a huge bite out of the budget. We ended up paying close to $7,600 in holding costs. We only projected around $5,000. So we were high with our projected holding costs. We padded that a little bit, but we didn't pad it enough. So our ARV was another thing where we kind of stole some good profit. Will and I did some really hard comp searching in the area, and we found enough that would say that 220 was a pretty definite, but we also found some that were up towards 235-ish, 240, and so we thought we might be able to get more, but we wanted to keep it conservative just so that we had that cushion if we did need a roof, or if we all of a sudden needed to rewire the whole house, which we did. Those things happen all the time. So the ARV actually is a place to steal some of that cushion from. So it's not just your offer, but it's also the ARV, so you can push both the bottom and the top, and you can widen that gap through enough cushion that you give yourself a lot of wiggle room to kind of deal with the problems when they come, not if they come, but when they come. So we actually got really lucky. I went over and met the appraiser at the property and was as nice as I could to him and as real as I could to him. And it actually worked. It ended up being like a really great conversation I had with this guy. He was also a young investor, and there's a instant camaraderie between investors all trying to do this same thing. And I noticed just right away he was like, oh, I'm trying to do this too. I know where you're at. I understand where you're coming from. Like, he just knew exactly where my mind was at, and we really clicked. And we went through the whole property. I told him everything that we did, since half of it was being done by me and my father and uncle. And so we had a really intimate, like, grip on what was done. So I just poured information his way
And
about
I'd like
all
to,
the, like,
Matt,
the love.
I'd like to clarify for the listeners. Uh, when Matt said the work was done by them, he's speaking specifically to finish work. We did have
Yeah,
permits for
yes.
electrical, plumbing, and the major
Yes.
systems. They were done permitted by licensed
Yes.
electricians
Right.
and plumbers.
Yes.
But the work that was done that needed to be done that we could do, we did ourselves. Just to clear
Yeah.
the
Yes. Yes. Sorry, that I should have said that right off the bat. Yeah, you can't do the work yourself if you don't have permits, and in order to have a rental dwelling, you need to have permits for everything. So you're not allowed to. So, yeah, the experience I had with the appraiser was really great. He ended up pushing us up to 250 at the end, which was really awesome. It's raised our mortgage slightly, but at the end, we were able to leave less money in the deal because of that really great appraisal. So we basically stole 30 grand in cushion just with that great appraisal. Um, so we ended up refining around 187.5. So our results were we left about 10 grand total in the property. So about 2,500 per partner was left in the deal. So ideally you want that to be zero, right? But for our first project, getting a really aggressive rent, getting a really great appraisal, pushing all of the renovation budget and finishes to a flip level instead of a rental. I mean, we did a lot of work to make it work, the numbers work, and I think that $2,500 per partner is not terrible to own a $250,000 piece of equity.
Yeah,
So
that's the conversation you have at the end is, yeah, we're each leaving $2,500 in the deal. But if I had come to you 6 months ago and I said, hey, give me $2,500 and I'll give you 25% of $60,000 in equity that's only going to grow over time, and it'll be self-sustaining and you'll turn a monthly profit, you wouldn't bat an eye. You'd say absolutely,
yeah,
not deal.
what do I say?
Yeah, and you can't really be promised that by anything. I mean, that's an extremely good return. So an ideal burr, you leave no money in the deal. But it's okay to leave money in the deal if you have a property that's going to grow in value in a good area, and it's self-sustaining.
Yeah,
Yeah, and a lot of people go for that perfect burr. Obviously, that's everything we generally calculate off of. However, you got this property for 10 grand. You have more equity in it, obviously, versus if you bought that, using a traditional loan, 20% down. You have a lot more money in it, and less equity than you do currently. So.
yeah. Yeah, it worked out. We got really lucky. We gambled with the finishes on the property, pushing everything to as high a quality as we could. And that ended up kind of coming back around, and we scored big with our rent. Not only were we able to get 1,900, but we got 1,900 with a pet, so we got pushed it to 1,950, which was close to close to like 250 over our expected rental income. So it went from being like a no cash deal, just a piece of equity to get us started, to a pretty solidly $230 a month cash flowing property. Yeah, all the rest of the numbers are there. Mortgage, taxes, homeowners insurance. Again, working with people you know, getting good mortgages from companies you've worked with before, making sure you're shopping around for the best rates. I mean, we shopped around for a while and ended up cutting another 1.5% off of our original quote, half because of the interest rates dropping like bricks, but also we switched lenders 3 times in our refinance. So we ended up getting a really good low rate on our commercial mortgage, and found a lender now that we are going to work with for the next deal because they do the renovation budget loans too at Prime Plus. So that was an enormous break that we found them, because that saves us 9 to 10% on the next reno budget interest rate.
What are the terms on the refinance?
Will, you want to grab that?
Yeah, we got 75% of the ARV. Our interest rate was 4.19%, amortized over 25 years with a 5-year balloon. So we just have to refinance before 5 years are up. Actually, no, this one was a 7-year.
7 years.
Right, Matt? Yeah, this one was a 7-year.
Yeah.
So, which is common, commercial mortgages don't normally go past that anyway. Shopping around for the lender cost us some time for sure. And, that probably hurt with making that final hard money payment. But at the end, it got us, when we started this project, we thought we were going to pay 5.5% on the refinance. We ended up paying 4.19. So, you quantify that over 5 years of rent and mortgage payments here, it's definitely worth it. Also, regarding our monthly reserves, we only put 10% away because we manage our own properties. If you're an investor and you don't plan on managing your own property, put more away. Factor enough for a property manager. You might want to put closer to 20% away. We're just accounting for capex and reserves in that 10%. So, even if we had to put 20% away, I'd still be okay. It doesn't necessarily bother us if this property made no money. As long as we didn't have to put any more money in the deal, we're still gaining equity every rent payment that's made. So, our target is always $200 per month per door. If we can make more, great. But at the end of the day, if I found a great deal in a great area and it only cash flows $50 or $100 or closer to $0 after everything's put away, still comfortable with it because the appreciation is where we're at.
Yeah, the rent's going to go up, the value of the home's going to go up, everything's going to go up because of that little bit of homework we did before, targeting the area with the great last 2 to 3 years of appreciation. So
Awesome. Well, great burr, first off. Oh, you got a little recap. All right.
Yeah, just one more thing. This is all stuff we've already went over. Avoid those high interest loans if you can. Sometimes you can't, but that definitely killed us. Always get multiple bids for your lenders. Again, that cost us that extra hard money payment, but $1,000 now versus a couple thousand over the life of the loan is definitely worth it. Add 20% to your reno budget just flat off the bat once you get your numbers. Just give yourself a break. Don't have that phone call wreck your day. Just have that phone call knowing that phone call is going to come and be ready for it. That's kind of what I learned of the oops, this needs to happen. And then if you have that 20%, we're good. And then that stress just never comes, because this is a stressful thing to do. It's not easy. If it were easy, I think a lot more people would do it. It's extremely stressful, especially when you're in the nitty gritty with it every single day, trying to figure out creative ways to, recoup the budget back and get back down to zero in your renovation budget. You're kind of fighting this scale and you see it dip way down into the red and you're like, all right, we need to save $2 or $3 grand to stay on target, and then you got it, and then you're up $1 grand and you're feeling good, so you buy a nicer sink and you're like, oh shoot, now we're back to. So there's this stress ball that just comes up and down, and a lot of my preparation for the next one is how I mitigate that stress, because at the end of the day, we want to be doing this a lot more often and a lot more aggressively to push ourselves to our retirement goals. So that stress needs to be mitigated at every turn possible, just to like save ourselves. um, so another thing was just like Will was talking about our roofing guy, the contractors that you get, if you know them or if you have connections or relationships with them, that is worth its weight in gold. I mean, the fact that a roofer will come up onto our roof with the opportunity to sell a roof and say, "Nah, your roof is fine. You don't need that roof." Like that relationship is saved us 10 grand there, you know. Um, so be good to the people that you know, and they'll be good back to you. You know, simple thing is just asking them how they are when they come over to work. What's going on in their lives. You get to develop that relationship, then suddenly, you're a little closer to these people that you're entrusting a lot of your time and money into. So that's a relationship to foster, just like the team members of your investment team. And obviously, as Will knows, hiring local is so important because you can have the kind of assurance that you can go to their place and find them if there's a problem, or call them, and they're right there at your disposal if there's an issue. So yeah, that's pretty much it. I'll hand it over to you, Neil. If you guys.
All right. So, I'll say first and foremost, let me, I'll take back the screen here.
Yeah, there you go.
All right. So, I didn't mean to do that. Do you guys see that?
Yeah, it's screen sharing, but there's nothing coming
man.
up yet.
That was a mistake. Anyway, so I just want to recap real quick because I thought you guys did a really good job. That's great, Burr. There we go. Hey, guys.
Hey.
Great, Burr. That I think not only did you learn quite a few lessons of how you work together, but also, like you made some good money. Here's just a couple bullet points that I thought I want to pull out and make sure people heard. Number one, first and foremost, like the research, like how you analyze this property or your investment property matters so much, and how you do it. So you guys put in the time to realize the right neighborhoods, like exactly like this zip code, this neighborhood. You did the research for appreciation. So great buy, and then more importantly, I guess equally as important is you underestimated all the profits, all the budgets. So like Will, as you said, you always underestimate the ARVs. That's perfect. That gave you, a huge leg up on your or balanced out you going over a little bit on reno budget, which happens all the time. So great work. And then I love that you guys said you looked back afterwards and evaluated. Is that what I heard you guys say? So like after the project, you looked back and figure out what went well, what didn't. You just walked us through. That's brilliant. There's too many times that we don't stop and look back at what we just did, right? We just keep it moving. There's a problem there. You don't learn from your mistakes. So there's something to be learn from in everything we do, and show humility and say I messed up. You'll hear a story that I'll show a lot of humility of how I jacked everything up. But that's awesome. So take that note down, and then also I thought you guys talked about you took a risk and put better stuff in there, but it was a calculated risk, I'm sure. So it looks like you got some better rents out of it. $1,950 for that place. That's some fantastic rents, and honestly, like it makes sense why I would want to live in that house. It looks really nice. I'm sure a lot of people do. And then on top of that, I like your theory around what if you don't want to have this property for 30 years? All right, cool. Then you can go around and flip this thing, and you're going to get great value out of that too. So really nice job, guys. I'll walk you through maybe real quickly. I don't have slides, but maybe a not so good one. My first flip, myself and my partner Dan of Highview Homes. So we purchased a house, single family house in Glen Olden. It was a twin, and we purchased it for $80,000. Will helped us get it, and after some negotiation, I think we got it was originally up for like close to 90, 89.5, something like that, and we did everything wrong, pretty much everything wrong. So we didn't do a whole lot of research beforehand, like you guys talked about, knowing the neighborhood, all that stuff. We did none of that. So thankfully, Will, knows what he's talking about and underestimates his ARVs, or conservative ARVs, helped us out. But we also we just got done a project. It went all right. It was our first duplex that we had. And we rolled right into the next project with the same contractor. Also, we talked a lot about, like, well, I shouldn't say a lot because that's not true. We talked more about what we wanted done with this place. We bought it as a flip, knowing it was going to be a flip, right? And we rolled into the project like the day of closing, and we never ever wrote up a clear scope of work, and we never got a contract signed. Really crazy mistakes. I know better. I knew better at the time too, but it didn't happen. So things moved quickly. We things went pretty well previously. The first project, like, it turned out all right. We were within budget. It worked, right? It was good burr. So anyways, we were just stupid there. So anyways, we had an original budget of $33,500. We had some kind of scope work. It just wasn't good. And no inspection, just rolled right into it. And once we did, a lot of things came up. A lot of times that we got a call from contractor, something else happened. We had to rewire our house too, electrical wise, because we also ripped open the walls and realized it was knob and tube. I could tell our contractor at one point in time, like, he was visiting the house less and less, and less was getting done. He was lying to us a lot. And honestly, we had a lot of conversation between Dan and myself, my partner. But honestly, it was our fault. Like, it was all our fault. I can be mad at him all I want, but it was my fault. Like, I allowed all that stuff to happen. So that's like one huge lesson, is that, like, you got to have ownership. Like, this is on you and you only. First off, I wasn't clear with the scope of work. Therefore, we would make changes all the time. So, like, that wasn't fair to the contractor. He's not a good contractor. He's not a good guy either. But but it still wasn't fair to him. So, like, the relationship started to spoil. I'm sure from his side of it, he saw us changing things left and right, right? And then from our side of it, we saw him not completing work as he was supposed to, and trusting him as he kept asking for money, and we kept handing him money, and then not seeing much change, and allowing him to do that, not holding him accountable. And then at one point, the amount of money that we gave him was worth way more than what was done in the house. Therefore, we felt compelled to keep him on. We couldn't fire him. If we fired him, then we got a whole bunch of money that we lost, right? So instead of that, we just kept on dragging it out, and we just kept trying to get little pieces of value from him. Meanwhile, we thought it was going to be a 3-month project. It turned into almost a 9-month project. Also, hard money lender. So 12% interest is not fun. Interest only payments every single month, not great. Holding costs, not great, right? And then eventually, after we felt we got enough value from him, we made him put in some cabinets and flooring and some other stuff. We fired him, right? So we had enough. We felt we were about even. We fired him. We got another contractor in there and did the same thing. It was a referral from someone, so we felt good about it. We just wanted him to do the flooring, and it was $6,000, and it was wasted. Did a really terrible job, and we had some kind of contract, but it was theirs. It just wasn't good. And then we finally got a third contractor in there, finished up work, and got it done. So anyways, our $33,000 of renovation budget turned into $53,000. Way different. And just lots of learnings there. So the good news is that Will helped us pick a property that he knew that would sell. We had a $160,000 ARV on it. So when we went to sell, which we ended up selling for $170,000 with $5,000 seller assist, right? So 165.
Yeah, you netted 165. Yep.
Yeah. So we ended up actually making $3,000. If it wasn't for being fairly conservative with ARV, we made $3,000. That's it. So a 9-month process, which really was taxing and tolling on us, our mental health, and I don't know, high blood pressure maybe, just wasn't like we got $3,000 out of it, not worth it, right? But that's not my mentality. It was worth it. It was well worth it because honestly, I thought we lost more than that. The other thing we didn't do well is keep track of everything. So we were both doing a lot of the jobs. We were both visiting the house a lot. We were both buying stuff. We didn't track our expenses well at all until the end. So meanwhile, when we're selling it, I'm like going through and trying to figure out. In my head, we lost $10,000, and I'm telling everyone, we just lost $10,000. That sucks. We calculate the math and realize we made $3,000. Look, I was okay with losing $10,000 because of the humongous lessons that we learned. And the crazy thing is, like, all this stuff I read in books, all this stuff I heard on Bigger Pockets podcast, like, I knew this stuff. I knew better, but I didn't stop to do it. So now going through this, thankfully making something, and then although nowhere near worth the time, but still making something, it was worth the lesson. My huge lessons are: get a great contractor, get someone really reputable, and then when you do, and there's plenty of ways to do that, right? You can get referrals, you can look on MLS at places that you like and look up who pulled the permits. There's tons of ways you could do that stuff. But you got to vet them out, and then you really have to tell them exactly what you want. Like, the scope of work is on you, not on the contractor, right? Whereas I approached my first couple deals like it was on them. Like, they were the, because they knew what to do, I was using their knowledge, or thinking that they were almost a designer also, or an investor, and they were thinking like an investor. That's not true. That's not their job. Their job is to make it all come together, your vision come together, right? So get a great contractor, you write up a great scope, get a great contract, go get a lawyer, and get a contract that will hold up and make sure that we are always protected, right? We always want the work to be ahead of the money, so on and so forth. Next is really good communication with your partner, specifically roles. So after this, we also look back and realize that our roles don't work. Like, us doing everything doesn't work. Us learning everything doesn't make sense. Split the roles up. So therefore, I read a book. It was called Traction. Crazy thing is, I should have known this because I use a lot of it in my day job. But Traction, check it out. It's awesome. It walks you, like, we had a business meeting and we decided what we wanted to do. What role was my role? What was I doing in the company? What was Dan doing, right? So I now own everything from the beginnings part of finding a deal, a property, putting it under contract, finding lenders, all that stuff, right? He owns everything from there on out, all the construction, the property management, all that stuff, right? So really nice and simple. And then each week we meet and have a business meeting via Zoom most of the time now, where we discuss what each other are doing. So we do update each other on it. That's where you guys were talking about, maybe there's certain decisions that have to be made. That happens. It happens once a week when it's supposed to, right? And then lastly, is, like, no matter how bad it is or how bad it seems, it's never that bad. It never is. So, like, stay calm, ask for help, utilize your resources. We turned something into, I was happy with a $10,000 loss because of how much I learned. Thankfully, it didn't end up that way. I made a little bit of money, but it's never that bad. I remember being in the moment. It felt like, the biggest thing ever, felt like a huge problem. And it was, but it was, now all said and done, 9 months later, it all worked out and all happened for a reason. So, so that's my little story. I will post pictures and some more details, some evaluation details in an Instagram story coming up. So stay tuned to that if you want to check it out. And yeah, that's all I got.
Yeah, a few things I took away from that, Neil. One, as you mentioned, and I've learned this over and over and over again, and I made the same mistakes over and over again. And finally, I'm to the point where, enough mistakes cost you enough money. You realize you really have to change the way you're doing things. Scope of work is, to me, the biggest thing. Like, if you don't have a detailed scope of work, like you said, your contractor's job, a great contractor, if they're out there, I'm sure they do these, but they're not going to be investor-friendly priced contractors. So if you're working with some of these, handyman type contractors, they don't understand or do scopes of work. You need to be very specific, have it all written down, have a plan in place, understand the entire project so that we don't make the mistakes, because like you said, and you own this, every mistake falls back on you. You're the investor, you're the owner. Everything falls back on you, regardless of whose problem it was. At the end of the day, you're the one spending the money. So do everything you can to avoid those mistakes, because you're the only one left footing the bill. The other thing, the timeline, yes, it took 9 months. In that 9 months, however, my estimated ARV went up $5,000. So at the end of the day, instead of losing 2, you made 3. It wasn't great that it took 9 months. I've been in deals for years, but it also gave you some time to sweat some equity out of it and walk away with a little bit less of a slap, more than like a slap on the wrist than a loss. And as you said, the amount of stuff you learned from that deal, I mean, I'm sure you know way more now than you did 9 months ago, every step of every transaction. So you'll take the knowledge, a kind of a master's degree in flipping a property for a $2,000 profit, not
master's
bad.
degree where they pay you $3K for it.
Exactly. Yeah.
I'll take that.
I'll take it.
And then, as I've learned, and I'm sure you now know, is once your contractor starts to go quiet on you, there's usually some issues. Yeah. Probably the biggest issue is that they're out of money, and that's usually what the problem is. And generally they're out of money because they didn't manage the project correctly, or there were changes made and they don't know how to put that lightly to you, so they stopped answering your calls. It's happened to me. It's happened to probably every investor ever. I'm not really sure how, you 100% defend yourself against that, but if you do the things like vet your contractors, get referrals, go to their job sites, see their previous work, do kind of all the things that are recommended before you hire a contractor, you can mitigate and minimize that possibility. Other than that, there's really no other way to 100% protect yourself. But I mean, all in all, I'm sure you're not sad about doing that flip. You learned a ton.
Yeah, definitely not sad about it. I think I actually, during that period, I was probably more calming down Dan than anything. Right. But no, I'm not sad. I'm really happy to go through it, and it helps set up. I did not mention, but the last contractor that came in there, like we knew what we did wrong. We fixed it, right? So we had scope of works, we had contractors, or a contract signed, and it was in the favor of us. And then we, at the same time, we were starting another project and did the same thing. So a clear scope of work, and that project just wrapped up. It's good to go, had no problems. I mean, besides, a couple things that pop up when you open up walls, but nothing crazy, right? So yeah, it's been good from there.
Good. So, I mean, great stories today. I'm sure our investors will really appreciate these examples, gives them some courage to go out there and still do deals in this time with, a global pandemic happening. So speaking to that, do you have any advice for investors currently, Neil, that are out there and they can do if they're, if they're on quarantine, even if they're still at their job? What are your thoughts as an active investor, someone that's that's hungry and still going after it. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, yeah. I work 9 to 5 still, or whatever, a 9 to 5 job, and I still work a decent amount of time. However, during this time, I and actually before that too, like I'm serious about my investing too in my future, provide financial freedom for my family. So I like to call it moonlighting in being an investor. It's really just a second job, right? So during this time, I would say a lot of people, like, one of the things I see the most is people are using this as a vacation, right? And I think a lot of people did that week 1 and 2 and then started bouncing off. I still see it happening, and that's crazy to me. Like, um, I mean, I get like the having a little downtime or maybe some time with the family or significant other. That's awesome, and I definitely encourage to do that. I definitely do it myself. But you have such an incredible time right now. Whether you are working and maybe you have limited hours like I do, or even if you're furloughed or out of work right now, tough times, that does suck. But work on bettering yourself, right? So, during this time, I think there's quite a few things you can fill your schedule with. And my favorite right now is like, well, actually, I'll take a step back. I'll say, first off, like, just get your mind right. Like, what do you want to do? Like, you got to know. I spoke about this before, but like, you got to know your why. You have to have a plan. If you did not do that before, do it now. What's stopping you? It's April. Who cares? You don't have to do it January 1st or whatever. Like, get your stuff together. Get a journal or write on a board. Like, you could probably see some of my boards up here. Like, that's my plan for the year. Like, it's like, stares me in the face every single day, and that's on purpose. So I never forget. I have to update it. I have to meet with accountability partners. Like, that's really critical. So get your mind right. Next, I'll say is there's so much free out there right now, or great content to fill your mind, right? Once you figure out what direction you want to go in, if it's similar to me and you want to do small multifamily rentals, there's so much content out there. So we all know Bigger Pockets, right? They have podcasts. They have 4 different podcasts right now. You can fill your mind with those, right? Or there's Bigger Pockets forums. Fill your mind with them. You have a question, type it in there. You'll figure out the answer, right? There's a million people that will respond to you. Even better than that, like, you can get local. I've been, Will, I'm a big proponent of going to meetups, and I don't go to nearly as many as I want to. Like, I think every month I fill this calendar. I generally send it to you and tell you which ones I'm going to, and I normally hit like 3 maybe, because I work a lot. I have a family. They're not always super close, right? Or during those times I can't make it across, from Montgomery County to North Philly to attend the meetup, right? So it's right now everything is online. Everyone's doing these Zoom meetings. Like, how easy is it to jump online from your house and go attend a meetup? So, like, I'll give you a couple that I literally attend probably 5 a week right now, if not more. You got Dig. So you guys probably know Dig. You might have to sign up for it. I don't know, but even if you do, it's like $100, $150 for a year membership, and they have like typically they have like 15 events a month. Right now, with them transitioning to Zoom, I think they have like 10. So they have like 10 virtual trainings with really, really seasoned experts that get on there and teach you, stuff. So there's so much knowledge there. Investor is another one that
What is
is
that?
ran locally.
What does that DIG stand for? Just so people who don't know.
Yeah, good call. Diversified Investors Group. So digonline.com. Invest Her is for all our females out there, or just men like me that don't mind being the only guy in the room. It's an awesome program. Some of the best stuff I've seen. Honestly, probably my favorite meetup I go to. I was going to the local Conshohocken. I guess on Meetup it's called Newtown Square now, because Ashley, the person that runs it, changed the location. But incredible meetup. And what else? Oh, there's Better Than Success, BTS, is one out of Philly, and their content is really, really good. And they do every single Wednesday night. So tonight at 7 p.m., you could jump on there for free. You do not have to be a member. So anyways, that's stuff that I recommend. And then the other parts are like read some books. And I was talking to a couple new investors the other day. Actually, I was doing a Zoom call with one of them. And my best recommendation for him was like, go analyze properties. Like figure out exactly the property, the details that you want. Like if you want to invest in, like, don't say you want to invest anywhere in like any property. Get very detailed around it. So like do some research, whether that's you have to call a contractor or inspector to do that, or whatever the case. Say, all right, I want these neighborhoods, these zip codes, approximately this much I'm willing to spend on the acquisition price. Just get nitty gritty around the details, and then go on. I prefer redfin.com for those of us that don't have MLS access, and like go on Redfin or Realtor or whatever you want to use, and go look for these properties, and you'll narrow them down to a couple of them, and then what do? Analyze them, like run them through an analyzer and see if they're a good deal or not. And do that, like anyone that wants to get in there. My one buddy, like I told him to set a goal, like do 2 a day, do 14 a week, like something like that. They'll take longer at first, but once you got it down, you'll analyze properties in a minute or two, right? So, he's working on right now. He's like sending me them, and it's like 14 during the weekend. It's just gonna get him really, really sharp around the numbers, and then when he gets a deal that it's go time, like he can do something with, he has enough money to do it, and will probably send him a deal, and he sees it, he'll know because he analyzed a bunch of properties, whether it's weeks from now and he analyzed 50 properties or whatever the case. So so my recommendation is get your mind right, put your goals on paper, know exactly what you're looking for, and work on it. Like analyze.
Yeah, I think my dad went around to 120 different places or something, drive by, before we found this. I mean, that was a lot of research, on the foot. So, it didn't just like come out of thin air. We had to do a lot of digging and a lot of difficult, research to
And if you have
find
nothing else to do, especially right now, why not?
Yeah.
If you're laid, like Neil said, laid off, furloughed, even like myself, I'm a real estate agent. I'm not allowed to show houses in Pennsylvania. So what we're doing is putting a process in place and correcting our mistakes. And if you're a new investor and you can't even see homes right now, or you shouldn't be seeing homes right now because you're trying to be safe, this is the best time to exercise understanding how to evaluate a deal. If you can like sharpen that skill, it'll save you a ton of time and money. If investors call me and they're like, hey, what do you think of this deal? And usually just by looking at the pictures and the numbers, I can say it's worth taking a look at, or nah, just forget about it. And that took years and years and years. But if you are spending this time wisely, you'd be doing that right now. Because if you can figure out, like, for instance, I know Neil is focusing on a certain area. If you can figure out how to evaluate one property in that area successfully, and using this time to call contractors and inspectors, because they're not working either. Now is a good time to get a hold of them. You can put together a plan that when you see a deal come up, you can evaluate it like that. Really, just by looking at it, you can usually know is yes or no. And then you spend more time going into it. You'll save yourself a ton of time in the future by just doing homework right now. So that's a great tip.
Good call there. Actually, I went into more of the recommendation of what I would do, right? And especially if you're just starting off, I'll tell you what some of the things that I'm doing pretty similar, but I'm taking this time really to go hard at like my marketing, my branding. So what I mean by that with marketing is like finding deals. So I'm working a lot with Will around, especially in this age, like how do we get a deal done, especially on MLS, virtually, like virtual tours, and how do we make offers. So like, for instance, the other day I sent Will a letter that we typed up that it's just like a personal letter. Like it's got pictures of my family on there on the bottom and Dan's family. And we have a personalized letter really to send with an offer, just saying, hey, this is us. Like here's what we're trying to do. Here's why why we're in this certain area that we're looking at, and we're trying to buy houses in this area. We want to revitalize the area. And also, here's why we're offering what we are. It's not just like, we're not just, offering, 30% off of asking because we're just being jerks, but at the same time, here's why, here's what we're going to put the money to use, to do. And also that builds some credibility there. So like, Will and I were discussing like, how do we get them to understand, like, to take an offer seriously? If I just throw in a $100,000 offer on a $150,000 list price, 9 out of 10 times, if not more, they probably will respond with, we're going to reject this offer or something like that, right? Like,
Sure.
They're not going to think twice about it. So anyways, that for one. Also, just like, so that's part of the marketing. I'm also doing a lot of off-market marketing, so like sending out mailers, and really one of the biggest things is like, this is a business, so you have to run it that way. So in my 9-to-5 business, I track everything. Like I'm in charge of a $40 million store. I track everything that has to do with it. All $40 million that come in, I track all of it going out. I track everything, right? Our NOP at the end of the day, right? So I got to do the same thing with this. So when it comes to like the marketing right now, like I built a spreadsheet out and I'm tracking something that I didn't do a good job at first, for the first year of being an investor, is like, what deals am I looking at? Where am I marketing to? How much am I spending per lead? What's the response rate? How do I respond? Do I have a script or not? So like my off-market deals, I'm sending mailers right now, and I have a small, like, not a script, because I'm not a scripted person, but I have notes to go over, and like just getting really tight around that. Another one's branding. Like, how do we brand Highview Homes right now? And that's everything from like our business cards to our logo to our website, Instagram, which I'm ramping up a little bit, stuff like that. So working on that stuff. And then Dan, my partner on the other side, he's working on the scope of works, right? So he has templates now for scope of works. He has a spreadsheet for like how much things cost. So like whether it's flooring, how much it costs per square foot, the flooring that we like to use, or whatever the case, getting really tight around that stuff. And then also like the contract too, like tightening up the contract. And then lastly, like, we're putting it all together. So all this stuff is shared between him and I, and we both have access to it. And like I said, we meet once a week, so that way it's we're always like, we both work a decent amount, but we're pushing ourselves to like, what are you getting done and what, when, and we're making commitments to each other. So that's also like, the sooner you can start that stuff, the better. And then last thing is we're starting to write our SOPs. So like our standard operating procedures of like even how to do this stuff. It sounds crazy, but like you say, like, how do I answer the phone when someone calls me? Or how do I narrow down on Redfin, like what houses I want to look at? Because eventually I don't want to do it. Because eventually I'm going to pay someone, a VA, a virtual assistant, to do this stuff, right? So like, just some recommendations, like how you can start, kind of some of this process now, so that way you don't get too far behind and it becomes a lot bigger of a job down the road.
Yeah, that's all excellent advice, and it's everything Neil just mentioned. I mean, look, if you're not planning on becoming or finding deals yourself and marketing, that's understandable. You don't have to do all of that, but in order to run a successful real estate investing business, you have to understand how to run a business, how to do a scope of work, how to properly bid out jobs. So these are all things you absolutely need to do. And, just scaling it to that level you want to take it to starts by laying the proper groundwork, which you guys are doing, obviously. The other thing that, I wanted to add just a general market update. Currently, I have a lot of my investor clients and people reaching out to me and asking, hey, what do you think of the market? How is this going to affect real estate? Should we start making lowball offers? Look, I'm a realtor and I'm also an investor. And there's kind of a gray area in between as to how I, toe that line. The reality is, and I'm telling this to all of my regular clients, is that I don't think real estate is being overly affected by this. Yes, the market has completely slowed down. We aren't supposed to be showing homes, but there are still agents listing homes and they're selling for over asking price still. And I do think that basically the spring market is the summer market this year. Everything's been pushed back about 3 months, 4 months or so. So there will be a strong push, and I think home values will stay relatively strong. This is all just from what I'm hearing from all of the information I'm picking up on, and all the realtors just looking at the market and kind of trying to figure out how this is going to shake out. And as a homeowner and an investor myself, I want to make sure my values stay strong. So I think the general real estate market will stay fairly strong. I do think that with the higher level of unemployment, there's not going to be as many buyers, qualified buyers. I think it's going to slow the market a bit in the coming months to the point where later this year, maybe early next year, it's not going to be as hot as it's been the last 4 or 5 years. The last 4 or 5 years has been absurd. We've gotten crazy appreciation. There's multiple offers on most properties that are listed correctly and are in the right shape. So it's going to go back to a slightly slower market, and that's okay because it makes homes affordable again. On the investor side, what we're going to see is we will see more deals. There will be foreclosures because of this. There will be a spike in foreclosures because some people cannot afford to pay their mortgages. Some tenants can't pay their rents. A lot of these investors that went out and bought 30, 50, 100 Airbnb properties, those are tanked right now. I mean, that is getting slammed. You have no income coming in on those properties. And people were buying those at full price. They weren't buying them as fixer-uppers. So there will be investors trying to offload those properties, and a lot of them will get foreclosed on. And those are areas that we as investors can look for to pick up these properties. In addition to that, a lot of these funds that were buying properties online, cash buyers, these large countrywide funds that were picking up a lot of the foreclosures from banks before they hit the market. A lot of people don't know this, but banks generally try to sell most of their foreclosures to these large funds before they list them, because then they don't have to worry about maintaining it. They don't have to worry about paying a realtor. They don't have to worry about any of that stuff. It's just an investor buying it cash as is, because they can sink money into the deal. They have a ton of money available to them. Those funds are not buying properties right now. There's no iBuyer right now. There's none of that. They've all shut down spending because they're nervous. They understand they might have too much money invested in properties. They might have to overpay for properties right now, and they don't know what's going to come. So as an investor, there are going to be more bank-owned properties on the market for us to bid on. That's great. That's now there's not 20, 30 bids on these properties because there's more inventory and there's less investors. So as investors, there's a lot pointing to this playing out correctly for us. It's great without hurting the regular residential real estate market too much, which is also great as a homeowner. But it's not going to happen right away. There's time. Most of these banks can't start foreclosures right now. They have to do forbearances. If you're doing a forbearance, don't do it. Please don't do it as a homeowner. Don't do a forbearance.
Don't do it.
It doesn't make any sense, but you have to at least buys that person 3 months. And then after that, the foreclosure process starts. And after that, most foreclosures don't hit the bank till months, if not years, sometimes after it's been foreclosed on. So we're not going to see the effects of this right now. And if you're an investor and you're going to go try to lowball a regular home seller, you're probably not going to get the deal done, and you're going to get frustrated. But understand that a little bit of patience, this will play out for us. put your right process in place right now, understand your, like, how, everything we just talked about, and then come later this year, early next year, when we start to see the residual results of this pandemic, then you're going to find some of these sweeter deals available to yourself.
Yeah, Will, I just want to, like, before all this happened, before, mid-April or March, whenever this all started getting crazy, we could barely keep up with your business. I mean, it was so, we were making multiple offers, 10, 12 offers a day on your properties, and we could not get like 80% of those to go through. I mean, that's
It's
how
frustrating.
wild it was. It was really, like, really out of line.
Yeah.
The craziness of the housing market. So if anything, this is just correcting us back to a normal, sustainable line, if we're looking at it like a line
Yeah.
graph. I mean, if before, from 2008 till now, it was like way off the top of the chart. I mean, it was just so unreasonable, the prices people were paying for homes. I mean, like a BRRRR was not possible, borderline not possible in the last, in January, February. So
At least the last 6 months, you've seen and we've seen, and Matt can attest, he writes up a lot of my offers. 5 years ago, I wasn't in any bidding wars, ever. There were no bidding wars, regardless of the spring market, investor, homeowner, none of that. But as it's gotten better and better and better, it's become harder. As even a home buyer, you're against multiple offers, crazy offers, sometimes 30, 20, 30, $40,000 above asking price, no inspections. That's scary for a homeowner. As an investor, you don't want to pay that because you already know it's overpriced and there's no equity there. So this correction definitely evens us out a bit. And this is not a housing crisis, it's a health crisis. But there's residual effects of that. There are unemployment, things like that will affect the housing market as a result of it. But the overall consensus I'm hearing, and what I believe, is that home values are going to stay strong without being as crazy as it's been, because it's frustrating for everyone involved.
Yeah, that's great points, man. It's a crazy time, and trying to navigate that is very tough. That's I said there's a lot of virtual trainings. Like I tag on to a lot of them, and they all have something. They all say something like, "What do you do in this market?" or COVID-19 or whatever case. I think of one I've been paying particular attention to, called Fixated on Real Estate for, and it's Tarl Yarber, Jay Scott is on it. I think Brandon Turner's on the next one coming up, and some really good experienced people that know what they're talking about, right? As much as possible. Jay Scott's really good in just economics in general too. I don't know if anyone's ever read his books. He has a book on recession-proof investing, which I'm rereading right now. Great book. And they talk a lot about there's quite a few things that could happen here, and there's who's to know. We'll see. But one thing is that the market was more than likely heading towards a correction already, right? So generally, your business cycle lasts like 5 to 8 years, and this has lasted longer than that, right? So you think about when it started picking up, it was 2012 or 13, something like that, whatever it was. And I guess it's right around that time frame. I think technically they consider like 2011. So we're on like 9 years or so from the business cycle, which is beyond. It's one of the longest, if not the longest, time that it's been in a growing market, for this long, like a healthy economy for this long, healthy, I guess. So there's bound to be a correction, and the problem is this is something different. The virus came in and shut down things, right? So as Will said, it's not like the last one was called buy real estate, buy these mortgages, right? And this one's not. So it's hard to tell, but I'm in the belief that more than likely, yes, it's slow right now. However, I can tell you it's not easy to get deals. There will be some people scared out there. And yes, as an investor, I'm sure you can take advantage of someone that is, right? Hence why I'm like ramping up the marketing and we're trying new things on MLS also. So I believe there is opportunity currently in this current state. If you're cool with it and you're comfortable with it, I think there's some opportunity. Not a whole lot, but I think there's some. In addition to that, there's a big feeling that there's going to be like that it's kind of a pause, maybe a small downturn, and then there's going to be a spike. Whereas the market's now not going to correct itself like it probably would have, out for a little bit more time. That is one possibility, right? So like it could be a fairly hot market again, maybe not as hot as it was, but a fairly decent market for some time, and then it could eventually correct itself and trail off. Or you may see something different, whereas we go into a full-blown recession based on, starting from this virus, and then you see the trickle-down effect. Which good news for investors is your prices come down. Bad news for investors, you heard there's plenty of mortgage companies, like you heard Chase announce last week or 2 weeks ago that they require a 700 credit score and at least 20% down. There's plus if you're doing hard money like we did, there's plenty of hard money lenders that pause, right? That suspended services, as well as other lenders too. Like I know some people that have done FHA, the construction loan. What is it, 205K or whatever it is? A lot of those are shut down. Yeah. A lot of those shut down. So like the money tightens up. So yeah, your price went down, but your money tightened up. So now's a really good time to just do the things like analyze the deals, talk to lenders, like build your relationships right now, because we don't know 100% where it's going. And either way, like a lot of people say, I know so many investors, including myself, that have wanted the market to dip, to go down. But now when it starts to, or if we see it dipping, it's going to be easy with price, but a little bit tougher with how you acquire it, right? Unless you have those processes and relationships already built. So just a tip there.
Great. That's great. It's great, guys. This was awesome. I mean, I'm sure we put out a lot of information on here and this was a bit longer than we planned for.
Blew that hour out.
Yeah, I think this is super important. Like everything here that we just shared, if you're a new investor or even an experienced investor, you can learn a ton from this, or react to it appropriately. I think this is awesome. I'm happy we're able to do this. I hope we can do it, a couple times a month at least virtually. Until we can at least get back to our in-person meetings, which are great, and we would love to continue doing those. But for right now, the Mastermind investor group that we're forming we're doing this for, I really do think that this is going to be great for everyone involved. So thank you guys. Looking forward to doing this with you again soon. Hopefully on the next one we'll have a guest speaker, someone to inform some of our clients on, and the other investors and our friends on some other aspects of the market, share their professional advice. My name again is William Holder. If you ever need to reach me, my phone number is 484-744-4053. Can also be reached at williamholderrealty.com or williamholderrealty@gmail.com. And then Neil, you want to share your contact information for any of the investors out there?
Yep. Neil Henning of Highview Homes. You can always call me, text me, 610-212-0256, or you can email me at highviewhomes1@gmail.com. I really have to change that email, but it's what Dan came up with, so that's what we got.
It works. All right, guys, this is awesome. Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
See you guys. Thank you.
Good to see you, Neil.
You too. We'll talk soon.
Yep.